So we got a Patreon listener question. Just want to let everyone know that if you are interested in the podcast and you love what we do have a Patreon. And if you get the $5 tier or above, you could ask us a listener question and we will bug you constantly if you want to put any listener questions on the show, and we will talk about it on the podcast and flesh it out as much as we can. And we have one that is actually related to something that has happened as of yesterday. And it's from TheGreySkull. He asks, with the Lost Light ending this past Wednesday, and it was this past Wednesday, comic book day, Wednesdays, that new comic books always come out, and the Lost Light's last issue, issue number 25, just came out, which is technically, chronologically, the last story of the IDW universe of Transformers, at least the current one. So he asked, with the Lost Light ending this past Wednesday and the current IDW Transformers continuity ending, I'm curious what other past comic books related to Transformers would you suggest to buy us time until the new reboot comes? And the sad thing is we don't really know when that reboot is coming. We do know
there's no news or anything.
Like we do know that we have Transformers related books that will be available outside of that. Like we have that Bumblebee espionage book from the movie continuity. That's kind of like a spy book. We have Tom Sicoli's GoBots book, which, again, not related to really that continuity. It's just kind of its own thing. And then there's that Transformers versus Star Trek book that I think is already in issue 1 at the moment. So, we have that. But I think they're referring more to maybe, he mentions here, other past comic books. I always say, like, to get a really good grasp of what a lot of people loved about obscure Generation 1 characters, because a lot of times you have people that are like, man, I love Bludgeon, or I love Nightbeat, or I love Scorponok. A lot of that stuff stems from those Marvel books, those old Marvel books. And I remember when I did my little meme clip there with Key and Peele, one of the items that got praise in that little thing was the G1 Marvel books, and that's primarily because of Simon Furman's work with those Marvel books. Not to take away from Bob Bugansky either. He had a lot to do with those books too, but Simon Furman's run at it really added a lot to that continuity and stuff. And if you really like Generation 1 and you have not read those Marvel books, it's kind of a service to yourself to really go back and watch and read those. It's the primary reason why I love the character of Shockwave and Bludgeon and Nightbeat. It's also why I love characters like even Inferno. They got more fleshed out, way more in those books than they ever did on the TV show, outside of like a Inferno Red Alert, episode here and there. But that being said, outside of even those, something that to some fans it might be an obvious answer, I also like some less obvious answers. I found the Armada comic book done by Dreamwave was above and beyond amazing, more amazing than it ever had any right to be. Oddly enough, Simon Furman came into that book in its second half. And oddly enough, when Simon Furman came into that book in the second half, I think he kind of ruined it. So, yeah. And that's crazy when you think about it, right? You would think like, oh man, when he's going to show up, but I think I think Simon Furman, when he came into that book, he kind of brought some of his own characters and ideas that he likes, and he kind of derailed everything that was happening. That was really good. But it's just, if you liked the idea of mini-cons, but as being as individuals that actually talk and don't just beep and boop like the Armada cartoon did, do yourself a favor and read the Armada comic books. It really makes you appreciate some of those mini-con toys that just kind of flew off the wayside. No one really thought much about. So characters like Dulor and Sparkplug that really were nobodies in the cartoon, like literally nobodies. And here now you look at them and you go, wow, that was like a pseudo leader of the mini-cons. So, hey, that guy was kind of like a pseudo Megatron leader of the mini-cons. Like, there's a lot of lore and history that they dip into in that version of it. A lot of the Dreamwave comic books, you take all the negativity that Dreamwave got from when they closed down from a financial standpoint, and you talk to a lot of former artists, Simon Furman as a writer or Alex Milne as an artist, and the fact that a lot of them didn't get paid and everything for their hard work. But putting that aside, they were doing a lot of really good stuff. I loved their War Within series. If you go back and read War Within, in a lot of ways, to me, that's some of the most definitive Optimus Prime origin kind of story stuff. Like if I had to pick and choose like my definitive G1 continuity, I really liked what War Within was doing at the time. Sure, it wasn't an Orion Pax, it was Optronics instead. They kind of went with a different title. But
Right.
I really like just the idea of him being chosen as an archivist. Again, certain
Archivist.
and again, those certain ideas that they even future ideas would pick from War Within and go, we're going to use this. We're going to use that. We like that idea. We like that this council gives him the Autobot matrix of leadership and stuff. So, deciding that he's going to be the next Prime and everything. Again, all ideas that came from War Within and then would just be used later on in War for Cybertron, the game, and then Transformers Prime as a TV series when they're looking back at, the past and everything. Just, I love the War Within books. I always suggest them. Like, I remember... I had some friends that wanted to get into Transformers, and they're like, well, we want to know about this Optimus Prime character. And at the time, the War Within books were still pretty fresh. And I was like, pick these up. It'll give you a good idea of who he is and stuff. And, I'm trying to think of, because you have, when it comes from comic books, you have the old Marvel books. You have the Marvel books from the UK. And then Dreamwave came around. They did their stuff. And they did the Armada books. They did the Energon sequel books, which never got to finish because of their bankruptcy, pretty much, their financial issues. The Micromaster book. That one I don't suggest, mostly because, and it's no fault of the artist, but I found that because Micromasters all transform the same way and have more or less the same kind of silhouette, it's a very messy book. So it's hard to kind of hard to keep track of everything, and it wasn't a great book in general. A lot of people weren't singing its praises, but a lot of that mainline G1 stuff that they were doing, I really liked what they were going with. A lot of it, it pretty much reminded Takara that there's a white Ultra Magnus under that Ultra Magnus armor. And then we forever got white Ultra Magnuses for Optimus Primes for a while afterwards. A lot of really good stuff. Pat Lee, for all the guff that he gets, was a talented artist and a really good snake oil salesman, I guess. But he did a very good job. And all the people around him that were contributing to the books, artists and writers, I really liked a lot of their stuff. And I always say that if you really need to keep yourself busy until we get that reboot, pick up some of the Dreamwave stuff. A lot of them are in trade paperbacks because somehow, I don't know how it worked, but somehow IDW got the rights to a lot of that stuff. So they re-released trade paperbacks of it.
Well, who's going to sue him?
Yeah, it's true. It is true. Yeah, Pat Lee
who's going to sue
Lee's
him?
hiding in China right now, so it's like...
Who's going to sue him?
But it's just...
And also he doesn't own the IP for Transformers.
Yeah, it's true. I think Hasbro probably picked it up afterwards. But so it's those are really good reads, especially the War Within stuff. I mean, The Fallen made his debut in the War Within books. You know what I mean? Like that was a, I don't want to say it was a Pat Lee idea, but it was definitely a Dreamwave idea. You know what I mean? Like The Fallen was a Dreamwave idea. The original 13 was a Simon Furman idea, but it was pretty much Pat Lee going like, why don't we, go more into this? And there was a lot of plans of doing an original 13 comic book and origin stories and explaining more of the Transformers history, and none of that ever got to happen because of everything getting cut short. So there's a lot of really good, look, if you love the character of Sunstorm and all the repaints that we get of him today, he was really fleshed out for the first time properly in those Dreamwave comic books. Like there's just a lot going on in them, and that's a good chunk. You have one 6-issue miniseries, then you got a second one, which is called, I think it's called Art of War, which is the second 6-issue miniseries. Then they do the ongoing, which went for a good 12 issues. Then you got the spin-off stuff. You have, again, the Micromaster story. They did a Beast Wars thing. They did a summer special thing. There was a lot of little stuff going on here and there. So it'll give you more than enough material to binge through, hopefully, until that IDW reboot comes around. But that's some of the best stuff. And on the other side of the ocean, there's tons of manga. Tons and tons of manga. It's more bite-size, unfortunately, and the writing for most of it is primarily aimed at a more shonen, younger audience when it was created. But there's tons of translated Japanese G1 manga out there of different kinds of stuff. And some of it is not the most, cerebral stuff, but it is out there. And then, of course, Sakamoto with all his bite-sized stuff that's out there, too, that's been translated. It's all a Google search away, and you'll easily be able to find it. But I would definitely suggest, if you haven't read the G1 Marvel stuff, go read that. If you have, go check out Dreamwave stuff. Not just the G1 stuff, but also their Armada stuff. It was a lot of good, fresh stuff, and they even did some universe-style bio books too, which I believe were called Transformers More Than Meets the Eye. Not confusing at all, that one. But they were just like giant bio books where they literally wrote bios and made new art for every single G1 character up to that point, including Micromasters, which was a big undertaking for them. But it was really cool that they did that, and so it fleshed out those characters even more, and gave them life again. Characters like Big Daddy and Bludgeon and a lot of others, and even Rodimus Prime, which really didn't make his debut yet at that point. In the fiction. So really cool stuff. Definitely go check that stuff out. Thanks for the question, TheGreySkull. Hope it gives a whole bunch of people stuff to read, and thanks for the Patreon listener question.